morning. The paper I will present this morning is an environmental issue, how climatic shocks can affect food security in developing countries. This is the outline of my presentation. I will begin with the objective motivation, the literature review, and we will see how climatic shock can affect food security, the empirical analysis and conclusion. The paper aims is to analyze the effects of climatic shocks on food security. For our work, we will use two complementary indicators of food security, food supply and undernourished population, and we will identify mechanism. And for this work, we will use aggregated panel data over 1960 to 2008 for 77 developing countries, including including African countries, and we apply modern econometrics. Donc, motivation, we know that there is an importance, there is a again an importance of the climate change debate. When we look at last year's UNDP report on MDGs, we see that the number of people living under the international line of poverty between 1980 to 2005 has reduced from 1.8 billion to 1.4 billion. And the same result has been found by Ravelion. But when we go far, we will see that the progress is not the same in the regions. In Africa, for example, the rate of poverty is almost the same. And when we go far, according to FAO reports 2 years ago, the number of people affected by extreme hunger is increased. He's risen from 800 million to more than 1 billion. In the economic literature, we can see two types of papers, theoretical papers and a few empirical papers. And empirical papers are microeconomics, not all, but most of them. And they focus on the effect of climate change on food production, agriculture production. Most of them find that climate change reduces food production, agriculture production. The originality of our papers is that we apply an empirical and macroeconomic studies for 77 developing countries, and we try to identify mechanism how climatic shocks can affect food security. And we'll use two climatic variability indicator. In the literature, there are many definitions of food security, and we will use the definition of FAO. When all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. And in the literature, we have microeconomic determinants and macroeconomic determinants of food security. How climatic shocks can affect food security? We try to identify four or five. The first effect is the effect on agriculture production. There are many papers. The second channel is the effect on household incomes. We also have the effect on food price, the effect on climatic shock on economic growth and country resources. And the last one is the effect on the risk of civil conflicts. Our empirical analysis, we use this econometrics equation. We have climatic shocks and control variables, income per capita, rainfall, population growth, democratic institution, and time effect, country effect, and then we apply OLS, fixed effect, and random effect, but we focus on fixed effects. We use two complementary measures of food security: food supply and the proportion of undernourished population. We go far and we analyze the heterogeneity between climatic shock and food security, the impact conditional on the civil conflicts. The second is the climatic vulnerability of countries, and the last one is in a context of food price vulnerability. But for this presentation, we will use only the first and the third. Our data are from World Development Indicators, and democratic institutions are from Polity4, and rainfall volatility, we use the data from Guillaume and Simone, and our data of food supply are from FAO stat. For our food supply, we use wheat, rice, maize, sorghum, soybean, and sugar. The result it is not clear. You can see the first line. We present the result with OLS, the fixed effect and random effect. What we see is that rainfall volatility has a negative effect on food supply, whatever the estimate we use. But we'll focus on fixed effect. And after that, we include in our estimate additional control variables to see if our results are robust. We include cereal production, agricultural land, arable land, rainfall square, and we see we have the same result. We find that rainfall volatility reduces food supply in developing countries. Why? Maybe because there is a high uncertainty on agriculture production and on household incomes, and climatic volatility have a negative effect of economic growth and can reduce the ability of countries to purchase food on international markets. And our results are robust with additional control. The next questions are the effect of rainfall shock on food security. We look at if the effects are different for countries in conflict. In the literature, we have some authors who show that climatic shocks can increase civil conflicts, and civil conflicts can reduce food supply. It is why we want to see if we have an indirect channel. And for this, we include in our estimation the additive variable of civil conflict and the multiplicative rainfall volatility multiplied by civil conflict. And we found in the third line, in the third column, that the additive coefficient and the multiplicative coefficient of rainfall volatility are negative. We find that climatic shocks, the effect of climatic shocks on food supply are more severe with civil conflict. The last hypothesis tested is the potential effect of climatic shocks in the context of food price shock vulnerability. Countries are vulnerable to food price shocks if they have low income, there is a high food import burden, and a high food dependency. And we construct this variable using the procedure of Degenvre and Sadoulé. We apply the same methodology by adding additive and multiplicative variable. And we find that the countries that are more vulnerable to food prices shocks are less able to maintain food supply. The next step, we'll apply robustness check. We use alternative indicators of climatic shocks from Mitchell et al. We find robust result. In our estimate, our rainfall volatility is the absolute deviation of the yearly average of rainfall from its own trend, and we use another measure that is defined as the 5 years rolling standard deviation of the growth rate of rainfall series. We find robust result. We go far and we ask ourselves if there is maybe an inertia on food supply. And for this, we apply a GMM system and we found good result. And last test is the use of the complementary indicator of food security. And when we apply the percentage of total undernourished population, we find that rainfall volatility increase the percentage of total undernourished population. And our results are always good when we include control variables. We go far, and we find that climatic shock reduce food supply, climatic shocks increase undernourished population, and we ask ourselves if food supply is a transmission channel, is a channel by which climatic shock can affect the proportion of undernourished. For this equation, we had in our estimate food supply, and we find that climatic shocks increase malnutrition through food supply. And we analyzed, we look at heterogeneity for African countries. In our estimate, we have 33 African countries, and we find that the effect is more severe for African countries. Conclusion, in our estimate, we find that climatic shock reduces food supply in developing countries. We find that food supply is a channel by which climatic shock increases undernourished people. We have negative effects in the presence of civil conflicts, and the effects are high for countries that are vulnerable to price shocks. And for recommendation, we have 3 recommendations. 2 are from previous authors: diversification of economics, the adoption of agriculture techniques, and we also recommend international institutions to increase the level of climatic aid to help countries to face the negative effect of climatic shocks. Thank you.